The story of rare diseases is not a new one. It is as old as humanity itself. For thousands of years, people have been born with conditions that made them different. These conditions were mysterious and often misunderstood. They were rare, meaning they did not affect many people. This rarity made them even more frightening and difficult to comprehend. Imagine living in a time with no medical science, no genetic testing, and no way to understand why a child was born with a unique and challenging health issue. This was the reality for our ancestors, who could only observe and wonder about these strange afflictions that appeared so randomly among them. The earliest records of these unusual conditions come from ancient civilizations. In ancient Egypt, a place known for its advanced knowledge for its time, we find some of the first written accounts. Papyrus scrolls, which served as their medical textbooks, describe various ailments. Some of these descriptions match what we now recognize as rare genetic disorders. For example, carvings and skeletal remains show evidence of conditions like achondroplasia, a form of dwarfism. The famous pharaoh Tutankhamun is believed by some experts to have had a rare bone disorder. These ancient Egyptians documented what they saw, but they could not explain the cause. These were simply mysteries of the body, divine signs, or curses with no earthly explanation. As we move through history, the view of these conditions did not always improve. In classical Greece and Rome, great thinkers like Hippocrates started to look for natural causes of disease rather than supernatural ones. This was a huge step forward for medicine in general. However, for conditions that were extremely rare, superstition often remained the primary explanation. People with visible physical differences were often seen as omens or the result of a divine punishment. They were frequently ostracized from their communities, left to live on the margins of society. Without understanding the biological basis, it was easier for people to rely on fear and folklore than on scientific inquiry, which was still in its infancy. This lack of understanding continued for centuries. During the medieval period in Europe, the situation became even more difficult for those with rare diseases. The influence of religious dogma was incredibly strong, and anything outside the norm was often viewed with deep suspicion. A child born with a severe physical malformation might be seen as a changeling, a demonic entity, or a sign of witchcraft. These beliefs led to immense suffering, not just from the disease itself, but from the social stigma and persecution that came with it. Families often hid their loved ones away, ashamed or afraid of what their neighbors might think or do. It was a dark time for medicine, and an even darker time for patients with no name for their suffering. The arrival of the 19th century marked the beginning of a significant shift in medicine. This was an era of great scientific discovery. Doctors began to document diseases with much more precision and detail. They started performing autopsies, looking inside the body to understand how diseases affected different organs. This new methodical approach allowed them to identify and describe many conditions for the first time. They carefully recorded patient symptoms, drew detailed illustrations of physical anomalies, and published their findings in medical journals. For the first time, rare diseases were being systematically catalogued as distinct medical entities, moving them out of the realm of myth and into the world of science. However, this progress in documentation did not immediately translate into effective treatments. While a doctor might be able to give a name to a rare condition, there was often very little they could do to help the patient. The underlying causes, which we now know are often genetic, were still a complete mystery. Without understanding the root cause, developing a cure was impossible. So patients and their families received a diagnosis which provided some clarity, but it often came with a grim prognosis. They were living in a frustrating gap between knowing what was wrong and being able to do something meaningful about it, a challenge that still exists for many rare diseases today. This period gave rise to the term orphan diseases. This powerful name was created to describe conditions that were ignored by medical researchers and pharmaceutical companies. Because these diseases affected so few people, there was no financial incentive to develop treatments. A company might spend millions of dollars creating a drug for a disease that only a few hundred people had worldwide. It was simply not a good business model. As a result, these diseases were orphaned by the medical establishment. Patients were left without hope for new therapies, abandoned by the very systems that were supposed to help them find cures and comfort. The term orphan disease did more than just describe a problem. It became a call to action. It highlighted a major ethical gap in the healthcare system. Patient families and a few dedicated doctors began to form small groups to support each other. They shared information, provided emotional support, and started to advocate for their loved ones. These early advocacy efforts were the first steps toward building a powerful global movement. They were planting the seeds for a future where patients would no longer be silent sufferers, but active participants in the search for treatments. These small, scattered groups were the foundation of the powerful patient advocacy networks we see today. A monumental change occurred in 1983 with the passage of the Orphan Drug Act in the United States. This piece of legislation was a direct response to the growing cries from patient advocacy groups. They successfully argued that people with rare diseases deserved the same chance at a healthy life as everyone else. The Act created financial incentives like tax credits and exclusive marketing rights to encourage pharmaceutical companies to develop drugs for these orphan conditions. It fundamentally changed the economic landscape of drug development. Suddenly, it became viable for companies to invest in research for diseases that had long been neglected, creating a pathway for hope where none existed before. The impact of the Orphan Drug Act was immediate and profound. Before 1983, only a handful of drugs had been developed specifically for rare diseases. After the Act was passed, that number began to climb steadily. Hundreds of new treatments have since been approved for a wide range of rare conditions, from cystic fibrosis to Gaucher disease. This law sparked a revolution, not just in the United States, but around the world. Other countries, including Japan and the European Union, followed with their own similar legislation. It proved that thoughtful policy could steer scientific innovation toward the people who needed it most, regardless of how small their patient population was. The rise of patient advocacy has been just as important as the legislative changes. Groups like NORD in the United States and Eurordis in Europe have become powerful forces for change. They are run by patients, parents and caregivers who have first-hand experience with the challenges of living with a rare disease. These organizations do so much more than just lobby governments. They fund critical research, connect patients to clinical trials, create patient registries, and provide a vital support network for families who often feel isolated. They have given a collective voice to the 300 million people worldwide living with one of over 7,000 known rare diseases. This new era is defined by the incredible partnership between patients, researchers and doctors. Patient groups now work directly with scientists to help design studies and recruit participants. They raise money to fund promising young researchers who might otherwise struggle to get grants. This collaborative spirit has accelerated the pace of discovery. Patients are no longer just subjects of research. They are active partners in the quest for cures. Their knowledge, their experiences and their DNA are some of the most valuable tools we have in the fight against rare diseases. This synergy is transforming the future of medicine for everyone. Today, we are armed with technologies that were once the stuff of science fiction. The mapping of the human genome has been the single most important breakthrough in our ability to understand rare diseases. Since most of these conditions are caused by a single gene mutation, genomics allows us to pinpoint the exact cause of a patient's illness. Technologies like whole genome sequencing can now diagnose a patient who has been on a long, frustrating diagnostic odyssey for years. Bioinformatics and artificial intelligence are also playing a huge role, helping scientists analyze massive amounts of genetic data to find patterns and identify potential new drug targets much faster than ever before. These technological advances are leading to revolutionary new therapies. We are moving beyond just treating symptoms and are now developing treatments that target the root genetic cause of a disease. Gene therapy, for instance, offers the potential to correct or replace a faulty gene, offering the possibility of a one-time cure for certain conditions. We are also seeing the development of highly personalized medicines, drugs that are tailored to an individual's specific genetic makeup. This is the dawn of precision medicine, and it holds incredible promise for patients with rare diseases who have had no options for far too long. The journey from discovery to treatment is still long, but the path is getting shorter. The fight against rare diseases has also become a truly global effort. Researchers, doctors and patient organizations from different countries now collaborate closely. They share data, tissue samples and research findings through international networks. This is critical because for an ultra-rare disease that might only affect a few dozen people in one country, combining patients from around the world is the only way to conduct a meaningful clinical trial. This spirit of global cooperation breaks down borders and accelerates progress for everyone. It shows that when we work together, we can tackle even the most daunting medical challenges facing humanity. In conclusion, the journey of rare diseases has been a long and arduous one. From ancient mysteries shrouded in fear to a modern era defined by science and hope. There is still a tremendous amount of work to be done. For the vast majority of the 7,000 rare diseases, there are still no approved treatments. But the momentum is undeniable. With growing awareness, powerful patient advocacy, global collaboration, and groundbreaking technology, we have more reason for optimism than ever before. The story of rare diseases is no longer just one of suffering. It is becoming a story of resilience, innovation, and the incredible power of the human spirit to turn hope into reality.